second I decided to start filming, somebody started mowing their grass. So I woke up this morning and immediately felt like garbage. So instead of getting all dressed up, I'm going to kind of imbue this video with a little bit more of like a sleepover vibe. I'm in my pajamas, I have a nice cup of tea. So if you are able to, maybe go get into your pajamas or wear something comfy or get yourself a cup of tea and a little snack. And if you're not, because I know a good amount of you watch me during your lunch hours, maybe this is just a reminder to do that for yourself at some point in the near future. I'm squishing my pumpkin. I have cut off most other forms of social media unless you count YouTube as a form of social media, which I kind of do. So not all forms, but all that's done is funneled more of my time into going on to Pinterest. So I'm on there a lot, if you can't tell, because a few of my recent videos have been taking Pinterest outfits and trying to recreate them. If you've been watching my videos for any amount of time, you'll probably know that I love baking and cooking. It is a hobby of mine. And so I thought I'd mush the two ideas together. I've definitely seen people do this on YouTube before. This is not like a new idea. I just wanted to try it. So it's gonna be a completely cooking video, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea. And I think that kind of lends into more of the sleepover vibe, like for the, probably small amount of us that are going to enjoy this video. We're all just kind of hanging out, this little group today. I don't know, it might do well, who knows? You never know. I just really wanted to try these recipes out and I thought filming them would be a good idea. So I have four? I don't feel well, so I didn't write a script, which I usually do for my intros and outros. So you guys are gonna get unfiltered me today. 1, 2, it's 4. I don't know why I'm doubting myself. It's 4-ish. These are Halloween baking ideas off of Pinterest that I thought I could do relatively well, and I wanted to test to see how easy it was to do at home. So I'll be trying them out and then ranking them like a 1 out of 10 for how I feel about them. All the recipes will be in the description. I found my own recipes instead of going off of the Pinterest recipes. I just kind of looked at the image and emulated it to the best of my ability, but they are recipes that either my mom has found or I have found in the past. So let's get started. The first idea is actually 2 things, but it's like one thing. I'm not explaining myself well. You'll see in a second. I have been seeing different Halloween inspired pies, and I love pies, especially during this time of the year. And I've been wanting to make some jam. So this was kind of perfect. So I made 2 different kinds. One that I've been seeing a lot was like the mummy or bloody bandage pie with a red filling. And the other one that I saw once that wasn't really a pie but inspired me to try to make it into a pie was like a pot pie with little ghost pastry bits on the top. And I thought, why not make that into another pie? I made 2 of my favorite jams that I have ever made. So let's go back in time because this was actually a few weeks ago that I started this video, and I'll show you the process. The first jam I made was actually a tomato jam. I love savory jams. They are that perfect mix between savory and sweet. The first step was to caramelize the onions and then add all the tomatoes I had on hand. Since this is a jam, it's going to cook down, so I needed a lot. Then for that sweetness and flavor, I added brown sugar, molasses, and apple cider vinegar, and then I let it lightly boil, stirring occasionally. The recipe said to let it boil for about 20 minutes, I believe, but my jam took well over an hour to cook down to a jam consistency. Then it was time to start on the sweet jam, and the flavor I picked was strawberry rhubarb. Now, rhubarb is such a wonderful addition to pies, but it can taste a bit strange if not treated correctly. So my tip is to macerate the rhubarb in sugar. It breaks down the rhubarb, which makes it easier to create a jam consistency, and it adds some much needed sweetness to the rhubarb. As with tomatoes, you can definitely add fresh fruit, but because the weather is getting colder, frozen fruit is a great alternative for jams. Since I'd made the homemade jam, I went ahead and bought puff pastry just to make the process a bit faster and less exhausting. Then I started cutting for the mummies. So after making the bottom rectangles, I made a bunch of strips. Then it was time for the spookiness to commence and start putting them together. While they were in the oven, I used this apple core to make eyes out of cheese. Now I feel like these could look like bloody bandages on their own, but I wanted to see how easy it was to make eyes with just what was lying around the house. I have some black food coloring and used a toothpick to make small pupils. For the ghost, I had to get really creative, so I used a circle cookie cutter, but only used 1/2 for the top and bottom of the pastry. Then I used a pizza cutter to make somewhat straight lines, then cut those down the middle. The best thing I had to make wavy lines was this crinkle cutter that we almost never use. It's not perfect, but at least it did something. They kind of look like the ghost from Pac-Man, which is cute. Then I used a reusable straw to make the little eyes. Then I made a quick icing with lemon juice and rose water, which I thought would have some nice complementary flavors to the strawberry rhubarb. These were so yummy. The tomato jam ones I had for dinner for like several nights in a row, and then I got to follow it up with dessert of another, little handheld pie. So I would say that these actually turned out really well, and since I bought puff pastry from the store, these were actually pretty simple. All I had to do was make the jam. I felt like the bloody bandage mummy ones ended up being a little bit better looking at the end, but they both were really yummy. So I'm gonna give both of these like an 8.5 out of 10. Probably the ghost would be like 8, and the bandage mummy ones would be 9s. So together they're 8.5. On to the next recipe. So this one didn't technically come from Pinterest. I actually saw this on YouTube Shorts, but like whatever. And I saw this video, I have to go find that, where somebody made the book from Hocus Pocus, and they made them into little cute, little decorated brownies. Hocus Pocus is one of my favorite Halloween movies of all time. I at least watch it once every year, if not more. And also 2 is pretty good. My mom had actually been craving brownies, so it was the perfect timing for me to try this recipe. So the recipe I used taught us how to make fudgy brownies, which I wanted to try, and they said the best way to get that texture was by heating the chocolate and sugar and melting it on the stovetop. One of my favorite ways to boost the flavor and texture of brownies is to add olive oil instead of butter, or sometimes combine both. Olive oil adds such a depth of flavor as well as creating a slightly denser brownie, which I tend to prefer. Before adding the egg and olive oil mixture to the chocolate and sugar, be sure that the chocolate sugar mixture is cool because the eggs might start to scramble in a hot pan. I forgot to add the pecans, so I just sprinkled them along the bottom rather than risking overmixing the brownies. Overmixing can spell doom for any baked good, so I try to avoid it at all costs. The next day I whipped up some quick cream cheese icing, which is my favorite icing, and then kept some white, made some forest green, and some dark gray. I thought the green would be a nice pop on the brown, but didn't think about at the time how that would make the books look very tree-like, but it was a pretty color. We heard somewhere that freezing your brownies for a few minutes makes cleaner cuts, but instead the brownie kind of just broke in the freezer, so I had to cut along that fracture line to make the rectangles. Then it was time to start decorating. Another glorious morning. Makes me sick.
Well, younger, a spring of a girl, but I shall be a spring forever once I suck the life out of all the children in Salem.
I have a pretty basic set of piping tips, and none of them were small enough to recreate the look from the original brownie, but Mom and I just decided to have fun anyway and watch Hocus Pocus and compete to see who could make the best book. These, okay, if I had had the right piping tips, like really tiny ones, I think this would have actually been like another 8 or 9 out of 10. But because I did not, and I'm actually learning, I'm like kind of bad at piping, like piping icing. So if anyone has any recommendations, give it to me in the comments. I thought I watched a few videos on like piping before doing this project, but I feel like it all just like went out of my head the second I started on it. But I still think it was really cute, and the brownies were super fudgy, like super fudgy. The fudgiest brownies I think I'd ever had in my life. I kind of like a in between like a cakey brownie and a fudge brownie. So if you like fudgy brownies, this recipe is awesome for you. Did I rate that one? I'm gonna say 6.5 out of 7, because the other thing I do have to say, the brownie was sweet and the icing was sweet, so together it was like a lot of sweet. So maybe modeling chocolate, or like that chocolate that you can buy where it can kind of be icing, maybe that could be a better alternative, or just using less icing with like tinier piping things. I just don't think I was able to recreate it to the level that I wanted to. Number 3, we're changing over from dessert to breakfast. Right around now is when I start getting such bad cravings for pumpkin or oatmeal or some kind of autumnal vibe for my pancakes or my waffles. And I saw on Pinterest these little spider web pancakes, but they don't look like they taste that good because they're so like skinny and there's so little of it. It would be more like a pancake chip. So I thought, I've seen pancake artists before, and I wondered if I could just make like a relief pattern almost of a spider web on the pancake, like cook it at different times. Cook the spider web first and then put the pancake on top, and it would kind of be like a little bit darker and kind of create like a relief pattern. Let me show you how that worked out. Up to this point, the pancake recipe has been pretty straightforward, but at this point, I whipped up the egg whites I'd separated earlier into stiff peaks. This helps the pancakes rise slightly and gives a much more airy texture. To make the cobwebs, I tried adding a bit of milk to a squeeze bottle and then added some of the batter and mixing that up to make it easier to squeeze out. My first attempts, as you might be able to see off to the side, did not turn out at all. You could barely tell anything was on it, and I was doing a pretty bad job of making cobwebs. So I got rid of the butter in the pan, added Pam for more even nonstick solution. Then I decided to try a jack-o'-lantern instead of cobwebs, since it's a pumpkin pancake. I completely cooked those little detail jack-o'-lantern pieces and then placed them on top before flipping. This worked out better, but it was never perfect. These were the best ones, which kind of worked, but at least they tasted really good. I would say that in the future, or for anyone else, because I'm probably never going to try this again just because it was so much work for breakfast specifically, and I don't like to work that much for breakfast. I would say I should have put a little bit of cocoa powder, which now I only remembered that after I worked on these pancakes. So I think that is one of the tricks of the trade for pancake artists, is that they make the batter different colors. So I think if I'd added a little bit of cocoa powder, that would have been a little bit better. And I think I should have never used butter for the pan and just used like Pam. I think that was causing too many little bubbles in the batter. So I'm gonna give this one probably a 5 out of 10 for me and how I did it, but the original looks very cute. It looks cute. I just wish that there was a way to eat a whole pancake. Last one was actually 3 different cookies, but it's all made out of the same batter, so I'm counting it as one. It is this jam thumbprint, which is actually one of my favorite cookies to make during Christmas. I don't know why it's considered a Christmassy cookie, at least in my mind, but that's what I was raised with. Jam thumbprints are a Christmas cookie. So I loved the idea of using it for a Halloween cookie instead. I couldn't find the original. I thought I'd saved it to my Pinterest board. Maybe it had been deleted, I don't know. But it's this like little skull cookie. Like I think this is Jack Skellington in the picture that I found, but the one that I saw was much more along the lines of like the Scream ghost face guy. And I wish I could have found it because that's what I went off of when I made these. But I'd also seen little gingerbread men, and I was originally gonna make gingerbread cookies, but I was kind of running out of time at this point, so I just meshed them all together. Gingerbread men that are either vampires or skeletons, and I wanted to do another kind of jam thumbprint, so you'll see how I changed that. And we have one more cookie that's a little bit more fall with all of the same ingredients. You know, it's still the shortbread. So let me show you all those cookies that I made. Shortbread is such a simple recipe, but a little finicky. So I started by creaming my butter and sugar, then I started sifting the flour. I usually whisk my flour to emulate the sifting just for a simpler and faster process, but just to ensure the correct texture, I actually just went ahead and sifted it. After adding the dry ingredients in several intervals, I brought it together on a cutting board and broke that up into 3 discs. After chilling for 30 minutes, which I don't think really helped with the texture that much, but that's what the recipe said to do, I'd recently purchased these fall leaf cookie cutouts and thought they'd be perfect for shortbread. You don't have to put shortbread far apart from each other since they won't rise that much due to not having eggs or baking powder or baking soda in them, which causes baked goods to rise. For the next one, I wanted to try the gingerbread men, but after the difficulty with the icing on the brownies and also wanting to keep to the thumbprint idea, I instead made a dent in the middle and tried to cut off some limbs to make it look like they maybe got torn apart by a monster or something. And lastly, I tried making the Ghostface/Scream thumbprints. While I was making them, I all of a sudden realized how similar Ghostface and the face from the Scream painting look. So while I was making these, I went on a bit of a thought spiral. Along with me, while editing me, did some research. So I recently heard that Ghostface from Scream was a mask that had been around before the movies came out. It was not made specifically for the movie. And so I started thinking, I wonder if the original mask was inspired by the Scream painting, which it seems like it was. Then I remembered that the movie was called Scream, so I wondered if they knew about the inspiration and had called it Scream based off of the painting, which had inspired the mask, which would come to be the Ghostface mask, which apparently it is. At least this is all according to Google's AI, which we all know how trustworthy that is. So it's all connected, and I'm sure a million people have already thought of this before, but I'd just realized it. So thank you for coming on this Google black hole with me. Okay, back to the cookies. I eventually got better at making the face shape, but they were never quite as good as the original, which I wish I could find for you. So you're just going to have to imagine mine, but 10 times better. Those are so yummy flavor-wise. Those might be my favorite thing out of everything that I made. I don't know if I did the best job. My shortbread, I've made shortbread twice recently, and both times I think they were just like a little too dry. And I've even added more butter both times and they're still dry. I don't know what I'm doing wrong recently. I must be like on a bad luck streak with shortbread. I don't know. But they ended up still being really cute. I'm still happy with them. I wish my jam, I thought I had red jam. I only had guava, which I love guava jam. It doesn't give off blood so much, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm gonna give those 7 out of 10 because I really like them even if they're imperfect. I actually really liked the fall leaves. I think those are really pretty, making them into little sandwiches. Anyway, generally, everything turned out really well. Even if it was kind of ugly, they were all very yummy, which is the most important thing when it comes to baking, because baking does not have to be perfect. I am a chaos baker. I go with vibes. So maybe that's why my shortbread isn't working. That's gonna be it for me this week. I had so much fun doing this cooking video. If you enjoyed this video and you've never watched me before, I do baking in most of my sewing videos. I sew and bake. I do vlogs. So if you like sewing and baking, consider subscribing. And if you watched my videos before and have not subscribed, consider subscribing. Also, liking and commenting also really help me out. Next week is a very fun video. I am so excited for it. It is going to be me making an adult version, like not adult, but like a grown-up version of my favorite costume as a child. It wasn't specifically a Halloween costume, but it could have been a Halloween costume. I'll explain it more to you next week. But I wore it all the time, like 24/7 for, I don't know, until I grew out of it. I have no clue. But until then, I hope you had a good time, and I hope to see you back here next time. Bye.
Why do you make it look like it's the end of a boobie?
That's what eyeballs look like. Blame it on the rain. Yeah, yeah. Am I straight across? Yeah, I'm pretty straight across. If I'm wrong, I'm gonna be so mad at myself. I don't know if I am straight across. It looks like I am, but I can't tell. Anyway, and if you've watched my videos before and haven't subscribed,